On the road to 2020, we have members of college Republicans and college Democrats live in studio to explain their party platforms and political concerns that face students within our community and citizens across the nation. Elon News Network is ready to tackle the latest pressing issues from healthcare, impeachment, climate change, and gun control, as well as those that hit hard right here at home: immigration, gerrymandering, and the opioid epidemic. Voters are paying attention. Democrats determined to seize their chances in taking back the White House from President Trump.
What the president did was so much worse than even what Richard Nixon did.
Republicans eager to hold the power of the presidency and regain control in both houses of Congress.
Everything we have created and achieved is at stake on Election Day.
The stage is set. We'll debate, you decide. Elon News Network's special political coverage of the Elon Political Forum Inside the Issues Debate. It all starts now.
Jane and Brian Williams studio. I'm Amanda Gibson.
And I'm Brian Ray. Thank you for joining us tonight for our Inside the Issues political debate.
Elon News Network is co-hosting this debate with the Elon Political Forum and will feature the opinions of college Democrats and college Republicans.
Each organization has chosen 2 representatives to be here tonight.
From college Democrats, Andrew Resnick and Hank Credle.
And joining us from college Republicans is Jeff Lee and Daniel Dorociak.
If those of you who are in studio and interested in asking a question to our panelists tonight, we encourage you to form a line at the mic stand to my right. We'll begin taking audience questions at 8:45.
But first, let's begin with opening statements. Based on a coin toss prior to our show, college Democrats, will start with you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Resnick. I'm a sophomore. I'm a double major in political science and strategic communications.
Hi, I'm Hank Credle. I'm a first year and I'm planning on double majoring in political science and statistics.
Tonight we're both representing the Elon College Democrats, and although we understand that there's many different political affiliations in the room and around the school, we really encourage everyone to get as involved in politics as they can and to register to vote if they are not already registered to vote, and really get involved in the 2020 election.
And college Republicans.
All right. Good evening, everybody. My name is Daniel Dorociak. I'm a sophomore here at Elon, majoring in political science and strategic communications. And I'm the treasurer for college Republicans.
Hello, I am Jeff Lee. I am a junior. I am studying accounting, and I am currently secretary of college Republicans.
So we are representing the Republican Party for the college Republicans of Elon University. However, we would just like to stay before that the Republican Party consists of like-minded citizens who come together to protect the individual God-given rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And we do not speak for the Republican Party as a whole, but as individuals within it. We're very excited to be here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here.
Good having us.
Elon News Network took to the streets of campus to find out what students think the most important issue during this election cycle is. Let's take a look.
I mean, climate change, gun control, and abortion, I think, would be the top 3.
I think the gun control issue is very topical right now. The environment.
I'd say climate change, probably. That's like the biggest thing to me, at least.
Mainly like social issues, I'd say, like abortion and stuff like that.
Climate change. I just think it affects all of us, and no matter your political views, I mean, you live on the earth, so you should take care of it.
I think that conserving our environment is really important, and just making sure everybody has like the equal opportunity around here, and there's no like discrimination or anything like that.
So to open up our debate, how do you respond to these students, and what do you think are the biggest issues facing college students in the 2020 election? We'll start with college Democrats.
Well, I mean, obviously there's a lot of issues being brought to the forefront of the 2020 election. Today, there was impeachment hearings, which are incredibly important, and I think are, really big indicator of where the country could be in the next couple of years. But I agree with the sentiments of the other students as well. I think gun control is a very big issue, as well as climate change. It's really pertinent and, will be affecting us in the next couple of years.
Another thing, if I could throw it in, is I think that a lot of the topics have been about social issues, but I would like to not let economic issues go by the wayside. We see candidates like Bernie Sanders who are championing that, and these economic issues are also play a main role in this election cycle.
In regards to what I believe is one of the main issues that college students are focusing on is the student loan debt that we are all accruing, especially since that is very much so related to students. I agree with a lot of the students' sentiments. A lot of these social issues are very important, and I'm very excited to hear what we all have to debate.
Mm-hmm. I would have to say that immigration is one of the biggest issues facing us at the moment, and I would also like to say that healthcare is a really important issue as well, because it impacts basically everyone, and our system really needs to have an update.
Great. 4 women are among the 18 Democrats racing for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. According to the Pew Research Center, in 2018, 53% of voters were women, while only 47% of voters were men. Considering neither of you have any women representing either viewpoint tonight, which party best represents the interest of women? College Republicans, we'll start with you all.
So I would argue that the Republican Party vouches for the rights of women. The Republican Party, as I mentioned in our opening statement, is, and I'll actually pull it back up, consists of citizens who are trying to protect their individual God-given rights. And so the Republican Party speaks for individualism, and we believe that the women should have the right to be that individual as well. Jeff, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I really don't think that, when it comes to women's rights and stuff, I don't really think that's exactly a partisan issue. I think that both parties can work towards making, conditions better for women, and also making sure that their rights are fulfilled. So I don't really see it as a partisan issue myself. It just seems like more of a bipartisan thing to me.
All right. I feel that either party can represent women based on what they morally feel like should be done in this country. Painting the entirety of women as one specific political affiliation or one specific ideal is just wrong in my opinion. But I feel like college Democrats and Democrats in general support women's issues more, see abortion, see the Equal Rights Amendment, see many of those things.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree with Hank there. Obviously, I think that the Democratic stance on abortion, giving women the right to choose, I think is fundamental to our democracy. Additionally, I think the Democratic Party kind of reflects women more, just with people, congressional members in Congress and people in the Senate as well. But also, I think a lot of Democrats are championing things like the closing the gender wage gap and other things, really kind of creating a fair playing field for women and men in this country.
College Republicans, do you all have a rebuttal?
I agree. Those statements that were made were very fair points. However, we also note that our party does allow and support the women's right to defend herself through advocating for Second Amendment rights, and the woman to be able to defend herself in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that the Republican Party in general seeks to maximize individual liberties, and I think that that actually empowers women whenever it comes to talking about economic policy especially. I think it's important for everyone in this country to have the right to free enterprise, and I think by allowing that for everyone, I think women are empowered as well.
And do y'all have anything else you would like to add? Great.
I think we're all good. I think we can come to agreement with that.
Yeah. All right, moving on. Climate change is a prominent issue heading into the 2020 presidential election. In fact, according to Reuters, nearly 40% of Americans say that it's a crucial decider in how they'll cast their vote. With that, President Trump announced earlier this month that the United States will be officially withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement.
According to the Washington Post, this makes the world's second largest emitter of greenhouse gases the only country to leave the agreement.
And on top of that, the most recent UN climate report says we will start to see dire consequences of global warming as early as 2040. We'll start with Republicans. Do you think climate change is a threat to the United States, and why?
I would say that yes, climate change is a threat to the United States. However, I do not believe that the United States is the sole problem in this issue. To quote a source that was mentioned earlier, the Washington Post, along with NASA, released a report saying that the Earth's ozone hole is actually shrinking and is at the smallest it's been since 1988. And in regards to the Paris Climate Accords, I just think, personally, I agree with President Trump in pulling out of it. It was a bunch of leaders and politicians flying on private jets to lecture the common person on reducing their overall climate footprint or their carbon footprint. And I find that a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah, personally myself, I don't really see climate change as an anthropogenic issue. It's not really man-made. It's just very natural variations in the Earth's climate. Furthermore, I don't think climate change is the big issue. I think the real big issue is pollution, because that's what's seriously actually destroying our environments.
And if I may add one more thing from that, the UN also released a report last year that showed 95% of plastic pollution comes from Asia and Africa. And the Trump administration is actually targeting plastic pollution coming over from China by signing the Save Our Seas Act in 2017 and renewing it in 2018 to target the South China Pacific global, or the plastic patch that's about the size of Texas that's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. It's devoting federal resources to cleaning up that area of the ocean.
Democrats?
I'll just start off with that. Regarding the Paris Climate Agreement, I'm on the opposite side. I disagree with us pulling out of there. I think every other country in the world besides Syria, Nicaragua, and now the United States is in the Paris Climate Agreement. How can we call ourselves the world leaders in trying to counter climate change if we're with those two other countries? I think that Daniel made a point. I think yes, it's hypocritical that maybe they were flying on private jets to places to speak to the common people about climate change, but that doesn't get over the fact that climate change is a really important issue, and it's something that we're going to have to address when we are, the leaders of the world in the next couple of years. I mean, the thing is, we got to consider how we want our kids and our grandkids, how do we want them to be able to live in the world in the next 100 years or so. I think it's a really important issue that I would hope everyone can agree on. I think where the political difference is, and Jeff kind of brought it up, where some Republicans don't believe that it's man-made, that man's kind of made it go faster than normal. And I would disagree with that as well. I would say since the Industrial Revolution in the 1800s, the global climate temperature has grown exponentially, grown about 2 degrees Celsius, which is a pretty big change. And I mean, you look in the last couple of years, there have been devastating hurricanes constantly. Right now you have wildfires in California, Australia, and the Amazon. I mean, I think climate change is absolutely real, and you are seeing the devastating effects in the world today.
And so what is the best way to combat climate change then, and should there be a global solution?
I feel like the Paris Climate Accords were a great step toward addressing climate change, as the people that were signing these things were members of political elites, and these elites are in fact the pallbearers of climate change in general. As you can see, the use of companies within China, which is a large reason why they're such putters out of plastic, and same with Africa. It's the developing world that is facing the consequences of these pollution through rentier state-esque factories that are being placed there.
And for me, I think it should be privatized. You see organizations like, what's the ocean organization for Save Our Oceans. It's the Save Our Oceans organization that has a bracelet that they make that if you donate $1, the plastic that is in the bracelet is used from plastic removed from the ocean. We also see our generation going together in the Team Trees initiative, started by Mr. Beast and over 600 YouTube collaborators to plant 20 million trees by 2020. One tree, after 40 years in its life, takes in 1 ton of carbon dioxide.
Yeah, and just to address what Andrew said earlier, I would say that yes, I don't believe that man is causing the majority of the change, but I also want to say that there's no reason why we shouldn't be looking for cleaner alternatives too. For example, coal, it's dirty, it's expensive. Why not just move to nuclear? Why not move to wind or geothermal or any other renewable source? I think that is economically a good idea to take on climate change using other solutions. So I don't think that we have to be disagreeing about solutions when both of us are interested in what it could bring to us.
And I agree with that. I'm with Jeff on the sense that we should move away from coal and other fossil fuels. The only reason that I and a majority of our party tends to support those institutions is due to the fact that a lot of our base is still enrolled in those jobs. And if we can somehow provide a way to provide job education to help those individuals who may be in, for example, the Appalachia region, which is very heavy coal, to find new ways of work that can supplement their income and maybe even boost their income, we'd be all for that, or I'd be all for that.
And is there any rebuttal that you have, College Democrats?
I mean, I agree with the sentiment that you guys have. I think that definitely something needs to be done. I absolutely commend those the influencers like Mr. Beast, that and the Save Our Seas initiative. Things that are organizations that are taking steps to really help out the environment. But I think privatizing I don't think is the best idea. I think if we have the government really get involved and create more jobs aimed at clean energy and moving away from coal, and it's not going to be all like snap of the finger tomorrow we're done with coal, but weaning ourselves off of it. I think that that's a much more sustainable opportunity for not just the country but for the world as well.
Republicans, you have anything to add?
I don't. Anything? Okay. In regards to international order, my international relations teacher, Dr. Yasmin Mijanovic, told me, and he quoted this from a scholarly article, that international law only applies to countries that give it the right to. So, in order for this international or even this national government organizations to actually help in this situation, we have to actually agree to let them do it. And a majority of our nation, or not necessarily a majority, but a sizable portion of our population, as well as several nations across the world, do not like that idea of foreign intervention in there.
Thank you, and we will move on. Americans have shown time and time again that healthcare is a top priority and their #1 driver to the polls come Election Day. A Wall Street Journal NBC News poll says 2/3 of registered voters support letting anyone buy into Medicare, but some 56% of registered voters oppose a Medicare for all plan that would replace private insurance.
Several of the Democratic candidates for president have proposed numerous health reform plans, such as building on the Affordable Care Act's coverage expansions, providing more generous subsidies for those purchasing coverage, creating a public plan option, or reorganizing the health system to make a public plan like Medicare the nation's primary source of coverage.
So with that, we'll hand it off to the Democrats at the table first. What plan do you think is the most probable, valuable, and affordable?
Well, I do feel like the Medicare for All plan is the most valuable. It allows public good to basically decide the whims of the Medicare industry. You no longer have private interests focusing on profit over people. But as much as I enjoy talking about that, I don't find it effective. I think that it won't come into place, even if people like Bernie Sanders come into office, due to the fact of Republican judiciaries willing to cut it down at any cost. But I do feel like that is this is the thing that you should be advocating for. This should be the goal.
I'm going to hand it off to you guys now.
Sure. In regards to a nationalized healthcare system, my mother used to sell furniture to the VA, and I know friends whose parents also have worked with the VA or have been to the VA as veterans. And my friends' parents have told me that the VA, which is a national-run veterans hospital, is so poorly mismanaged that when they walk out by the catering doors, they see the charred remains of soldiers sitting outside that were not able to get treatment. A nationalized healthcare system will not work. We look at the Canadian and Norwegian systems that tend to be the talking points of the more democratic Medicare for All speakings. In a CNBC business report said that Norway and Denmark are among the highest taxed nations in the world, according to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
I would like to add to that. I think the real problem in this country is the affordability, because prices, considering that the quality is similar to other first world nations, like our healthcare system is so much more expensive than their systems. And part of the reason is because I believe, I'm not an expert in healthcare, just to put it out there, but the hospitals will take you and they'll give you the treatment and then they'll give you the bill afterwards. And it gets to a point where people are going bankrupt trying to get health care, and people are disincentivized from seeing treatment because it's so expensive. I definitely think it's a huge issue that needs to be addressed. Personally, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if it's private, I don't know if it's public, but I definitely do think that something needs to be done about it, or else our people are going to continue to suffer.
So how do you pay for Medicare for all? Democrats, we'll start with you.
Well, a good first step would be starting a tax on the largely wealthy, such as the wealth tax proposed by both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. This would dramatically increase the amount of money that is entering the private sector, which would in turn finance the Medicare for All reforms. Yeah, basically that.
Yes.
So I personally do not think it is fundable at all unless we were to raise taxes on such a larger amount of the population, including the middle class, and raise those taxes to a level that would be economically unfeasible. There have been several estimates out. I've heard from the range of $13 to $15 trillion for Medicare for all, if not maybe less, give or take about $1 or $2 trillion. I'm not exactly 100% sure. That's one of the facts I actually didn't write down. And that wealth tax that was proposed would only raise $2 trillion, give or take again $1 or $2 trillion in 10 years, which would not cover the full amount of the healthcare for all cost, as well as increasing our national debt dramatically.
Thank you. As you all know, a few weeks ago, the House successfully voted on a resolution formalizing the impeachment inquiry, affirming the ongoing investigation into President Trump and establishing procedures for public hearings, authorizing the release of witness deposition transcripts, and outlining the process for transferring evidence to the House Intelligence Committee.
The committee is now tasked with investigating, drafting, and voting on future articles of impeachment. Throughout the last few weeks, we've seen numerous officials pressed on Capitol Hill. Today, hearing from a National Security Council advisor, as well as a key aide to Vice President Pence. Let's kick off the discussion, starting with the Republicans at the table. Do you think President Trump should be impeached based on his involvement with Ukraine?
You want to speak on this?
Yeah, I suppose. So Daniel and I actually wrote recently an opinion piece on this in the Pendulum. And basically, we ran through the facts of what's going on with the whole investigation with the impeachment proceedings. And as of this time, there are still developments all the time, but we believe that there is no sufficient evidence to actually have Mr. Trump, have our president impeached. That might change if there's any new, evidence, direct evidence. However, at the present time, we don't think so. And we also think that other person should also be investigated, such as Joe Biden and others, and the ICIG who changed the rules on admitting hearsay evidence. We believe that there's a lot of accountability that needs to be dished out.
And then I also would just like to add, Ambassador Yovanovitch, the one from Ukraine, at the end, or during her testimony, one of the ranking members of the Republican Party asked her if there was any criminal intent or criminal evidence within the phone call, and she was not able to answer yes on that. And so with that evidence, and plus evidence that Jeff mentioned, which is well written out in our Pendulum piece that we wrote about a week and a half ago, 2-3 weeks ago maybe?
2-3 weeks ago.
That tends to be our stance. However, I also tend to be a law and order person. If there is evidence of a crime, and I can be convinced that there is evidence of a crime, I will support the impeachment, which is a violation, because the president violated a law, and it would go against that principle.
And Democrats, what do you have to say about this?
Well, naturally, we're going to disagree. To start off, I think one of the talking points you've seen from Republicans in these impeachment hearings is that there was an attempted quid pro quo, and he never really went through with it. And I guess to kind of echo a Democratic talking point, if you attempt a crime, that still makes it a crime. The wording in the Constitution on impeachment, it talks about high crimes and misdemeanors. It's very vague, and it's up to us as an American people to interpret. Did President Trump violate high crimes and misdemeanors when he ended up calling Ukraine and tried to get dirt on Joe Biden? From the Democratic's perspective, he was using congressionally passed aid to further his interests, specifically in the 2020 election, and go after a political opponent. To us, it's pretty obvious, I think, that he should be impeached. And if you want to talk on that too?
Yes, I feel the same way as Andrew, that he should be impeached, but I feel like a more further issue is whether he should be removed from office in a sense. And I would tend to disagree with this because intrinsic to my beliefs about this current administration is that Trump is, for lack of a better term, stupid. And his vice president, Mike Pence, is very much not stupid. So removing Trump from office and then Mike Pence being in there would only serve to hasten the amount of terrible policy that will haunt America for the years to come. And therefore, I believe that he should be impeached, but not removed.
So do Americans care about impeachment, and should they, and why?
Are you just opening up to the table?
Yes,
or asking?
we'll start with the Republicans.
Poll after poll after poll tends to show that Americans are interested in this impeachment. However, there's been conflicting numbers. Some saying about a week ago saying that only 48% as opposed to 52% the week before supported impeachment. And those numbers obviously are fluctuating depending on the testimony that goes on. But I think that Americans should be watching this regardless of how they believe, because it's an important moment in our history, regardless of whether you support the president or not, and I think it's important.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because at the end of the day, what impeachment is about is to hold our highest official in office accountable, and if for a good reason and a legal reason that trust has been betrayed, then there definitely needs to be some accountability. That's the end all be all in my eyes.
So in y'all's opinion, why should Americans care about this?
I mean, yeah, I agree with that sentiment again. I think that, this is, impeachment's only happened 3 times, or 2 times up to now. Trump has not been impeached yet in U.S. history, and no president has ever been removed from office from impeachment. So we're really kind of in unprecedented territory right now. But to be able to, have a check on the president and say, this is a line in the sand, you cannot cross this, I think it's really important to all Americans. And again, regardless of how you feel politically, I think if you're involved and engaged and really knowledgeable on this, it's only helpful to, for the American public to be educated on it.
And furthermore, in the realm of political tactics, impeachment should be a thing that you do, but it should not be a hill you die on. You cannot make your entire agenda based on political impeachment. Rather, it needs to be a mix of social, economic issues. And furthermore, impeaching Trump should be a good thing because it tells voters that this person cannot be trusted. He is basically a liar.
All right, moving on more now to the issues here at home. For the past year and a half, state Republicans and Democrats have been fighting over the issue of gerrymandering districts here in North Carolina. After the approval of a new map last week, the two parties may find themselves in court again as Democrats argue the new map is still gerrymandered. Given that gerrymandering is a North Carolina problem and the recent order to redraw congressional districts, how do you think that will affect the 2020 election? And we'll start with you all Democrats.
Absolutely, gerrymandering is definitely a local issue as well as a national issue too. There's been numerous states implicated in a Supreme Court case brought up either this docket or next docket regarding gerrymandering. And I think, I would hope this is going to be a kind of a bipartisan issue. I don't think it's right that one political party gets to redraw the maps every 10 years. It's not right. I think there should be a nonpartisan commission in each state, consisting of Democrats, Republicans, and independents as well, to be able to fully and really just correctly redraw the district lines as needed. I think right now gerrymandering has been used as a way to suppress minority voters and really just put parties together in sections that they shouldn't be in.
Yeah, to build up that, I hope to God this is a bipartisan issue because you can see in different states different amounts of the legislature being controlled by specifically one party at a time. And yeah, I believe that there should be a nonpartisan commission specifically based to make these maps so that they are bipartisan, so that they are fair to each party.
I would like to say that, yeah, I pretty much agree with that too. I mean, this should not be a partisan issue. This is really down to making elections fair for all sides concerned. And although it's not likely to ever happen, an independent commission that's solely consisted of experts who use mathematics instead of tactics in order to draw the maps, I think that's absolutely necessary if we want to call ourselves a real democracy.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with that. However, in order to really fix this problem, I think the real one issue that we are going to need to address on both sides of the aisle is we just need to own up to the fact that in the past we made a mistake, and we are, you know, as you mentioned it, biasing against minorities, whether that be minorities of race, ethnicity, or in the sense of Illinois, where I come from, the sense of political party. It tends to be dominated more by the Democratic Party due to the size of Chicago and other big cities, and that has been seen in the shaping of the districts in Illinois. It's obviously not as big of an issue as it is in North Carolina, and I know we're talking North Carolina. I apologize for going off topic there. But, you know, in order to really fix this problem, I think we both need to own up to the fact that we both had made mistakes in the past so we can move forward.
And so 10 of the 100 counties are split into 2 different congressional districts under the new map. Do you think the maps are fair this year with the new map?
I try not to speak on things that I'm not very knowledgeable on. I have not seen the new maps. I have not looked at the new maps. So I don't 100% know.
Yeah, same answer here. I don't know much about this issue.
I mean, again, I'm not really knowledgeable on the maps as well, but I'm going to revert back to what I said before, where I think, you know, it isn't a fair map unless you have a bipartisan commission consisting of, you know, people from different political parties, people of different racial, ethnic groups. I think once you have a commission that's representative of the state that you're in, I think then a map will be fair, and, you know, you can really hear from every single side. I don't think you should give all the power just to one party to redraw the maps.
Yeah, and to build off that, I come from North Carolina, shout out Moore County, and currently we are split dramatically between 2 areas, one being the kind of Pinehurst, Southern Pines area, and one side part being the Vass area. And between these areas is a dramatic difference in economic well-being. The Pinehurst area is far more wealthy, as it serves basically as a retirement home for a bunch of Northeasterners. And the Vass area is largely a lot of underserved white working class people. It just is very obvious to me that these maps were sort of drawn along at least class lines.
Moving on to some more local issues facing us here in Alamance County. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, between 1999 and 2017, nearly 400,000 people nationwide have died from opioid overdoses. This includes prescription opioids like OxyContin and illegal opioids like heroin and fentanyl.
Since 2010, the opioid deaths in Alamance County have risen over 450%, and some voters in North Carolina are calling for the expansion of Medicaid as a possible solution to the epidemic. That being said, let's go now to the Democrats. How do you think the government on a state and national level should be addressing the opioid crisis?
Well, on a state and national level, I think there should be accountability for the people who distribute opioids. You see in many cases that there are companies specifically influencing doctors to prescribe these opioids to people, especially people that have physical pain, which largely comes from the blue-collar working class area again. And so I think a lot of this government's time should be spent on holding these companies accountable for hurting the citizens that are most vulnerable.
Yeah, to go off of that, you know, definitely I think Big Pharma in the past has become really corrupt. Recently, Purdue Pharma had a huge lawsuit and they lost, and they owe billions of dollars and actually now are bankrupt. And I think they're a lot to blame with the opioid crisis in the country today. I think, I do think that we should probably increase funding a little bit into the opioid crisis, but not until we reevaluate the programs that we have. What we're doing right now to treat, you know, drug overdoses and everything like that clearly is not working, and, you know, the only answer that we have for anyone that uses drugs is go to jail. And I don't think that's the right option that we should do. We should be more focused on holistic treatment and really helping out the people with their socioeconomic status, not only focused on, you know, punishing the people that use the drugs.
So in regards to the opioid crisis, Johnson & Johnson also was a major company that was sued recently. I believe personally, I agree with your sentiment that, we just tend to punish these individuals. We should instead invest more or reconsider rehabilitation abilities. Currently, a lot of local, state, and interstate law enforcement officers are now carrying medicine that can prevent or override an overdose of opioids or other drugs. In regards to the national policy, the Trump administration is also addressing this. In their issue with China, with the trade war and all of that's happening, one of the major points that the Trump administration wanted to have signed and added in order for a deal to be made was that China needed to crack down on the fentanyl trade that is coming between China and California. A recent arrest in Ohio, I believe it was Ohio, a recent arrest in the I believe it was Ohio, found enough fentanyl to kill over either the entire city of Dayton or I know this is big numbers difference, but the entire city of Dayton or the entire state of Ohio 10 times over, which is incredibly, needs to be stopped. It just really does.
So the opioid crisis in North Carolina is one of the reasons that some are fighting for Medicaid expansion. So should the state of North Carolina expand Medicaid? And we'll start with Democrats.
Yes, I believe that North Carolina should expand Medicaid. A lot of the reason that these people are forced to take these opioids is because they don't have time off work. They don't have the money to go see these specialized care physicians to help them move through these injuries or pains that are hurting them. With a Medicaid expansion, you can see these people being able to afford more accessible care that will keep them off these addictive substances that are akin to heroin.
To go off that point, I do agree with Medicaid expansion under the terms that you need to have these people checked and make sure that they're not going to use that money to continue using drugs. You have to make sure that money is mandatorily used towards anything with rehabilitation centers or drug treatment centers. I think if you can ensure that the money is going, again, with the whole thing with the opioid crisis, if the money is going to the right resources and really being used for good, I think that's when it will be beneficial. Not just giving people money because they have, a pretty bad situation.
In regards to how North Carolina, correct, is how North Carolina should deal with this.
Yes.
We currently have a $900 million plus surplus for our budget. So the best way I think North Carolina can use this, even though 67% of voters in a CBS poll said that they believe that surplus should go back to the people, the state itself should invest in more rehabilitation programs for these overdoses or people who are addicted to opioids, as well as invest more in giving this life-saving medicine to law enforcement officers, paramedics, as well. $900 million is a lot of money in this state. In regards to expanding Medicaid, I think that would just boost taxes on a already overburdened population in taxes. So I do not believe in expanding Medicaid for the tax reason.
So both in North Carolina and the United States as a whole, but especially North Carolina, we have a large Latino population, and the sheriff of Alamance County has taken an active stance against this. So how should the government be handling immigration as a whole? And Democrats, will start with you all.
Do you want to start?
Sure. I think we're definitely not going to see eye to eye on immigration. I think the U.S. really needs to be more empathetic in the way that they have their immigration laws. I do agree. You can't have anyone just come over a border and be a citizen. You need to have a good legal path to citizenship, and that's again, that system on legal immigration is really broken. People are stuck waiting, almost a decade. To get different forms passed through, to be able to get a visa or green card. And I don't think that's right. I think, if you're coming to this country and you want to be a citizen here, you should be able to be a citizen as quickly as possible. I think I definitely do agree that we need to secure our border more. I disagree with the Trump administration. I don't think putting a wall there is a good idea. I think, having better technology and, just better training of border agents would be the best option for the country right now.
Republicans?
In regards to illegal immigration, I tend to pick a side that is, again, more towards what my mother has always said. My mother and my family as well have a motto, we are all for a hand up, not a hand out. And so in regards, I tend to try and make this my main view on immigration, which is why I take the stance, if we have the financial capability of helping these individuals, I don't care if 100 million people came to the border. If they wanted to come here the right way, they have to go in through the actual processes outlined under federal law. I believe that if they want to come in the right way, welcome to America. They have to do it the right way.
Great, thank you. The New York Times is predicting voter turnout for the 2020 general election will reach record numbers.
While Democrats have benefited from higher voter turnout in the past, some political experts are saying Republicans might see an advantage this time around.
For students at Elon, it's often a choice of whether to vote in North Carolina or in their home state. In 2016, the U.S. Election Assistance Committee found that more than 57 million people voted early, absentee or by mail, a number that has nearly doubled in the last 12 years.
But North Carolina is traditionally a swing state where elections are typically close. We'll turn it over to the Republicans. Should Elon students vote in their home state or North Carolina, and why?
I mean, whatever they want to. I think it's their choice, honestly.
I mean, this could also go on based on what you personally believe. If you personally believe that, you're a more left-leaning or a more right-leaning individual and your state tends to lean that way, or you want to help try and make change in your state, you should vote in the state you want to vote in at home. However, if you want to vote in North Carolina, I don't see an issue with having them vote in North Carolina. I definitely do think, though, they need to vote. Regardless of how you affiliate, you need to vote because it's your God-given right.
Absolutely.
Democrats?
Yeah, I think, if, for me, for example, I live in Maryland, which is a very one-party state. I'm hoping to change my voter affiliation to North Carolina. But for someone else, a student that lives in Florida or Pennsylvania or Ohio, any of those swing states, I think, the application and the whole process to switch your voter registration can be a little much at times. So if they're in a swing state, and again, depending on their political affiliation, and if whatever they deem fit, I think, they should vote wherever they want.
And furthermore, on the subject of voting in North Carolina versus your home state, I feel like that you should vote wherever your heart is, of course. And just to go back to a little bit earlier when you were talking about this, I feel like North Carolina is going to see a drop in the amount of voting this time due to a constitutional amendment that they passed last election cycle that requires now photo IDs for every single person who votes. So I believe that this will see a downturn in voter turnout. But so I want to stress to the viewer at home: vote, please.
Great. Well, thank you both for your responses. Today, we asked students what questions they have for their politicians on representatives. Here's what some said.
Probably the topics I would like to see addressed is the issue of bipartisanship.
Why is the funding for HBCUs up for debate?
The environment. Why isn't there more issues being done to help with gun control?
Are political parties too polarizing? Do they divide people more than they bring them together to make harmonious decisions?
I think that politicians are not willing to work with each other just because of the look of the party.
Why don't we invest more in green options and environmental friendly decisions?
Some of the most significant heroes and civil rights activists come from HBCUs, so why is it that the funding of these institutions is up for question?
Some of the main points were bipartisanship and party polarization. So starting with college Republicans, what are your thoughts on that?
I do see an increased, polarization of parties on both sides of the aisle. And I mean, it tends to show in our national elections and our state elections, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been a lot of polarization in the past few decades. Every study that studies this is showing that America is becoming more divided than ever before. You can even see it within the parties.
So how do we go about resolving that and moving towards bipartisanship?
I don't really think there's a solution to that. I think people are going to stick to what they believe, and I don't think that the trend that we're seeing right now is anything that is a force that we can directly or indirectly shape ourselves. I think it's just going to have to play out as it always has played out in terms of politics.
And if I may add, I personally think the best way to really build bridges between people who may or may either different sides of the aisle on the same side of the political part, farther apart or closer together, is instead of really listening to, all the violence that's happening on TV, go out and actually talk to your neighbors, get to know them, instead of listening to the stuff on TV.
And Democrats.
Absolutely, I agree with that. I think, if you even watch the impeachment hearings the last couple of weeks, the vitriol and the hatred it appears, between the parties is awful. And, maybe behind closed doors these people are friends, but in the public realm, it's really dividing and separating the country. And I totally agree with you, Daniel. I think what we're doing right now, where you're engaging in a discussion with people that think differently of you. I mean, everyone here is a human, and everyone has thoughts and feelings too. They're not, Republicans aren't monsters, Democrats aren't monsters. I think, people don't think that way right now. And I think if you engage in conversations with people and really get to, everyone has similarities on something. Once you kind of make those connections, you see them as people instead of, someone else that's a Republican. And you bridge those gaps that, have been created in the last couple of years.
Great, thank you. We're now going to open it up to our audience to hear their questions. So we'll start with our first question.
Hi, I have a question for the college Republicans. So you mentioned before on the topic of immigration how you feel that it's more of an issue of coming here the right way. So firsthand, since I was a child, I've seen how difficult it is to get a citizenship in this country. So what is your stance on the process of immigration and how difficult and how long that line is and how to get people here that need to be here, need asylum to be here?
I actually would like to answer that question because I've heard from a lot of people who have come in the right way that they're actually enormously frustrated with the fact that so many people can circumvent the system without any punishment whatsoever when they've waited in a lot of cases, and especially when it comes to immigrants from China and India, they've waited years to go through the process and come in here legally. And when they see a bunch of people circumvent the process, then they who have followed the rules, who have followed the law, it's basically spit in their face, So that's what I have to say about it.
And for me, I definitely agree. We need to relook at it and see if there's anything we can do to help reform the process, making it easier for those of better or who provide a possible business creation, who are interested in creating a business, or who are interested in, those who are able to contribute to our society in a meaningful way, which most immigrants are. And I'm not saying that immigrants aren't. Would be, a good way, I think, that we just need to look at all of this and see if there's any way we can reform it. That's the main point I'm trying to make there, is that we need to try and look at it and see if there's things we can fix.
Thank you.
Hello guys, my name's Trip Hill. So this question is addressed to all of the gentlemen on stage. Do you believe that with growing cynicism in the current system of society and just general ideas that people want drastic change to their lives, do you see the current way America functions? Do you see that changing dramatically perhaps in our lifetimes?
We'll start with you all.
Sadly, as much as I would like to say, yes, I do not see this. The people who are controlling society, aka elites, men of business, things of this sort, are in fact pretty much ingrained in their position in society, and they will keep society as they see fit. Of course, I would like to see a political change, an economic change that brings more equality to the people that are underserved, but unfortunately, unless our government tackles these issues and tackles the people responsible for creating these issues, I don't see that happening, sadly.
College Republicans?
I would say that there's not going to be a way for the current system to continue. It's getting, A, we're getting more polarized, and B, people are getting really
defensive.
Defensive and offensive, to be honest with you. I don't think that the way things are right now, I don't think we're going to heal. I think there's going to be some drastic change. People are already talking about a civil war, I think something is going to have to change before it gets better.
Mm-hmm. Our next question.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Carly Zachariah, and my question is for college Republicans. As two Republican men, I'm curious as to whether or not you consider the implications of your vote and the effects that they have on not only a woman's right to choose, but also to her access to reproductive health services?
Now, for me, I was adopted. And so through my education in Catholic high school and through knowing the fact that I'm adopted, my beliefs tend to be pretty set in stone. I believe personally I try not to get involved in this debate due to the fact that my beliefs are pretty stonewall. My beliefs tend to not change on this issue. And I know that's not very good in this whole political polarization talk that we were just having. But it does weigh on me, but due to my life story and how I'm like that, that's how I tend to choose my decision.
Yeah, I mean, I basically think that, it's good for everyone to have individual liberties, but also there comes a point where the choices that people make harm society as a whole, and if we continue to let individuals make bad decisions on behalf of society as a whole, that's not really something that I think is acceptable.
Next question.
Hi, I'm Katie Howell, and my question is for whichever party feels they can answer it best. Regarding the opioid issue that was talked about earlier and different solutions that could be instilled, one was the rehabilitation centers. However, regarding the stigma that's often around opioids and those who use them, those who are addicted to them, do you think people would use these options, and should we be considering investing our money elsewhere?
Democrats, we'll start with you all.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that, again, it's a really big issue, and it's really kind of tough to tackle specifically what, is the best option to use to really combat the opioid crisis. However, I think that the best resources that we have now are rehabilitation centers. And I'm not saying they're perfect right now. However, I'm saying, if we do, again, just revitalize those organizations and make sure that they're really effective, I think if we do that, then the stigma will kind of go away. If we really address that head on and, again, reevaluate how we conduct the rehabilitation centers, I think that stigma will eventually go away in the next couple of years.
In your response, College Republicans?
Well, I absolutely agree with you, Andrew. I think that there definitely is a stigma, and there needs to be a way for people to reach out for help. That's not, we're going to throw you in a prison cell. I think it's absolutely necessary for the benefit of society as a whole to have rehabilitation centers, and I really don't know what better alternative there would be than rehabilitation centers.
And I think maybe a way to implement this in a good way is those who are already in prison, for example. Brazil uses this where they actually release prisoners to a rehabilitation center and actually let them take jobs in the community and do all this. It's a system that I'd have to explain in a much more amount of time that we don't have, unfortunately. But prisoners that are already in prison for these opioid or drug offenses can be suggested or given these resources or given access to them. I think that'd be a great way to implement those rehabilitation programs without messing with without over stigmatizing them.
Thank you, and we'll move to our next question.
Hi, my name is Kira Letzinger. My question is about, so Elon University's voting rate in the 2016 election was 43%, which is far less than the national college age average. Currently, students can get a Phoenix card, but they have to go out and get it. That counts as a voter ID in the state of North Carolina. Would everybody involved, all parties, kind of be in for an idea of Elon making it just the natural Phoenix card be something that's as a voter registration card?
We'll start with Republicans for this question.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. I'm in support of the Real ID Act, the voter ID that was passed in North Carolina. I'm in support of that, and I like the idea of making it so Elon students, more of them can vote if they have that Phoenix card. I'm fine with that.
Just one issue that I might have with that is that the Phoenix cards are actually made in a partnership with Wells Fargo, so I don't really trust that Wells Fargo is going to also have potentially an influence on our ability to vote. That just does not sit well with me.
Democrats?
Regarding the ID voter laws, I don't think we really see eye to eye on that. I think that, it's a democratic right that anyone can vote. And, say I forget my ID at my house when I'm going to the voting polls. Does that mean I can't vote that day? I think, as long as you are able to show up and fill out forms that are needed to be filled out, I think you should be able to vote. But regarding the Phoenix card idea, yeah, I think we've all kind of shared the same sentiment that we should be able to vote. Everyone should vote, and that's a fundamental right in the U.S.
And we'll have to stop you for time reasons, but can we have our next question?
Hi, my name is Ethan. My question is largely aimed at the Democrats, but either party can answer. So less than 1% of gun violence is committed with semi-automatic long guns like the AR-15 we hear so much about. So what are some possible proposals that will fix the rest of gun violence and is actually something that will make an impact and help save the majority of lives? Thank you.
Well, just to start off, I think we're the country with the most guns in the world, and we by far have the most shootings in the world as well. That includes mass shootings, that includes suicides, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I think with more guns, there are more killings, and I think that we've tried everything to not blame the guns over the years, and I think that the reality is that guns are the problem. One thing that I would suggest is ammo limits. The Las Vegas shooter, for example, had 300 some rounds of ammo, and I think that's way too many ammo magazines that anyone needs. People will say it's the Second Amendment and you cannot restrict it, but I just want to say the First Amendment as well is restricted. You can't only say anything you want. You are restricted. You can't say obscenities or libel or anything like that.
Republicans?
Well, I have right here my Constitution, and I have underlined. Oh yeah, this is George Washington too. The underlined here is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Department of Justice has released several reports graciously provided by a member who tends to know more about firearms and statistics on them than I do. But it has shown that gun violence tends to occur in areas that are gun-free zones, such as schools and other things like that. Only 1% of mass public shootings since 1950 have occurred in places that were not considered to be a gun-free zone. So I think we need to look at that and also look at the mental health crisis that is also plaguing our nation.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question.
Apologize for the mic, there's a little height discrepancy. My question is primarily for the Democrats. I just want to preface this that this is like this is a kind of a climate issue. Greta Thunberg is a 16-year-old Swedish environmental activist who shares her anger and frustration about the climate with the world. But she is neither a scientist nor an economist, and she offers no practical solutions to the economic ramifications that her ideas would cause. But then in contrast, Boyan Slat is a 23-year-old inventor who designed the world's first ocean plastic cleanup system at the age of 16 years old, and he now leads a group developing advanced technologies to rid the world of the ocean plastic. And I was just
for time, we'll just have to get to the question.
And I was just wondering, like, how would you kind of address this idea, or like, how would you help someone who has real ideas and has done real work, such as himself, and how would you help him kind of get the notoriety that he seems to be lacking in comparison to her?
Fair enough. Just real quick, Greta Thunberg is actually 13 years old, and I think a reason why she's gotten so much traction is because she leads by example. For example, she went across the Atlantic Ocean twice in a mission-free boat. But I commend anyone that really tries hard to address the climate change problem that we have in the world today. I think anyone should be recognized for their efforts.
Thank you. And this is going to be our last question. You each have 30 seconds to answer.
Hi, my name's Trevor Murrah. I'm a senior. My question is for both parties. So I think one of the more optimistic things we can look at is the American economy is doing really well. For anyone who's studied the economy, positive traits don't typically last forever. So how do both parties see the economy affecting the 2020 election?
Well, the economy is very strong right now. So, and furthermore, I believe that it is going to probably lead to Trump getting reelected, sadly. But I would say this is not going to last forever, and with a Keynesian type economic.
That's all the time we have. Moving on.
Yeah, the economy is really strong, and I agree with the sentiment. However, how strong the economy is, it determines how President Trump gets reelected.
Yeah, I mean, if it just doesn't crash within the next few months, that is, because a lot of people are hinting at signs of recession. So hopefully that doesn't happen, but we'll see.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our semester political debate.
A big thank you to the Elon Political Forum for co-hosting this debate with us, and a big thank you to our representatives here with us tonight.
For more when we are not on the air, check out our website, elonnewsnetwork.com, or on social media at Elon News Network.
Have a great night, Elon. Yeah, no, I'm in fact